Good evening. My name is Garrett James Lawrence, and this is the first episode of what I hope to be a long series of a new show I'm starting. We don't really have a name yet, but that is something that we will figure out later on. The premise of this show is that I've always been passionate about politics, and about the gospel, and about speaking the truth mainly, and sharing what I believe in boldly and bravely. I don't think I've always done that. I don't think I've always been super brave with my beliefs until maybe the last year or two. Really, I was told by many friends and family, family members, and some of my friends that I should do a show or start a podcast, and I kind of sat around for a while and never did that. Never was brave enough to do that. I would mull it over the next morning, and I would just be like, oh, whatever, I'll do it some other time, or maybe it's not smart, or maybe I won't be good at it. But I think I really want to hit this on the head correctly. But about over a week ago now, almost 2 weeks tomorrow, Charlie Kirk was murdered, assassinated more specifically. And I think it woke a lot of people up. I think it drove a lot of people to start questioning both the people around them and the intentions of the people that they believe in. And they also started questioning their own beliefs. Furthermore, I think it encouraged a lot of people as well to go out and be more bold, be more brave, share the gospels, share what they believe in more aggressively, I think I, in the last year or two, have started to do that already, but Charlie Kirk's passing was really kind of the final thing to make me really realize I need to get off my butt and go do this thing. I really have felt called to do this for a really long time, and I think I have treated it as a season of waiting. I really think I thought God would put the opportunity in my lap, but with the passing of Charlie Kirk, it was very apparent to me that this is a season of action for me and for all of us. I really confidently believed that there was a future in doing this and sharing what I believe in front of a camera and in front of a microphone. Not to glorify myself, but to A, glorify God, but B, share what I think is right. And I, as a believer, have a moral obligation to do that. And it's kind of one of these situations, especially when you look back through history. If, as a believer, you're going to be persecuted if you say something and if you don't. So why not? What do you have to lose? Like, why not now? Why not go and pursue that thing? Why not go and talk? Why not go and follow that calling? Why not go and do these things bravely and boldly? I think for a long time, I thought what I was doing in the meantime and posting on social media and talking with friends, that was a good milestone, and what I was doing was good and it was righteous. It was in pursuit of justice and truth. But I feel like that this right here, this show, this whatever we're going to call it, I think it's the next necessary step in this pursuit of truth and justice, especially with a biblical perspective, and also being able to defend my biblical perspective and my worldview secularly. That's another thing that Charlie Kirk really did well. And I don't want to make this whole episode about him, but it is incredibly inspired by him. I was more of a critic of Charlie Kirk than a fan. I really was. I remember when he did the Surrounded video on YouTube, and I didn't really like a lot of the things he said. I didn't really like a lot of the things he said in general at many of his debates, but then I realized that I'm assuming that my perception of what he's saying is perfect. And I'm assuming that my feelings, that the emotions I felt in response to what he said, that were perfect. But then I also came to the conclusion, and a great professor over at Penn State also said this, but Charlie Kirk has hundreds of thousands of hours, and you could probably find an equal amount of things you disagree with that you do agree with. And that to me is inspiring. I hope that I can create an environment just like that. And I think all of us, as believers and just people who want to entertain truth especially be involved in politics. I think that's something we should create. I want you to disagree with me because it allows me, it gives me the ability to be challenged and to reinforce my ideas. There's no way that I can go and talk for hundreds of thousands of hours and not one of my ideas not get challenged. I really don't think, and to follow that, I don't think that there's any way that anybody on this planet is ever going to continue to narcissistically assume that what they're saying is absolutely correct. I think a lot of people, Joe Rogan, Tucker Carlson, Charlie Kirk, Bill Maher, all the big names in podcasting and shows, I think it's really arrogant to assume that they haven't learned anything from the people who have challenged their ideas. So I'm hoping to challenge other people and their ideas, and I'm hoping to open their eyes a little bit more, especially believers. I think there's a large problem right now in the United States where there's such a polarized kind of divide between believers and non-believers, but only, not just that, but it's like people that, believers specifically, who want to box themselves in the conservative mindset, in the conservative bubble. I think as Christians, we're called above and out of that, and that kind of brings me to segue into kind of what really prompted me to get this going. And it was, I actually posted a reel on Instagram, and it amassed a certain amount of views. I've never gotten attention like that in my life. At the time of recording this, I've got like 442,000 views on there and like almost 40,000 likes. It's not a lot in the grand scheme of things that are on social media, but for me, that was a lot. And it was a video of me. I actually initially recorded it for somebody I know, and I initially recorded it to just send it to them. I was going to a Starbucks, and there's a lot more context to this, obviously, but it is a Starbucks in a conservative area, so the chances of me having the name Charlie Kirk written on a Mint Majesty are much higher than if you were in San Diego. So I understand now, this is the crazy thing, is I posted this video of me going through the drive-thru because I thought it was cool. I asked for a Mint Majesty, I didn't say anything else, and I posted the full clip. There was one trimmed clips I put together because it was maybe more palatable for viewership, but then also I posted the full clip of them passing me the drink, and I actually grabbed it and it faced the camera before I even realized that they wrote the Charlie on it in quotations with a little heart next to it. It was really sweet, and it warmed my heart, and I posted this on social media without knowing that actually that same day, another video was posted on social media of someone getting the Mint Majesty from Starbucks, and a barista wrote loser on it. And since then, I think Starbucks has released a statement on that. Obviously, we don't need to get too into that, but this is kind of moving in to support my point about the polarization right now in the political climate. Not to sound like Jaden Smith when he was on that podcast, and he was like, can we talk about the political and economic state of the world right now? Guess what, Jaden? We are. But I posted this video, and there are kind of three schools of thoughts, of responses. Number one is the most neutral and agreeable response, and that's a lot of people responded very kindly. They wanted to go out and do the same thing, and they wanted to go get a Mint Majesty and in honor of Charlie Kirk. It emotionally really hit me, and spiritually as a normal person. I feel like Charlie Kirk was, again, I'm not trying to make this whole episode about him, but it's really hard not to ignore the incredible kind of charge that this event has given everybody to go and try new things, be more bold in their faith, but also just speaking truth in general. And not to get sidetracked, but the schools of thoughts were, they enjoyed the video and they wanted to go get a Mint Majesty. The other school of thought was the more conservative side, which was two things, really. Number one, it was Starbucks supports abortions and they only hire immigrants. How dare you support them? That's actually the main school of thought. And that really annoyed me, because I'll get to it in a minute and I'll tell you why. But furthermore, the liberal perspective on this, some of the more liberal, more democratic, more left-leaning comments were, Starbucks this is kind of the two-part thing. Some were like, Starbucks would never write that on there. They would never write Charlie Kirk on there. They would never acknowledge him at all. You wrote that on there yourself. That's what the left was saying, more leftist-leaning comments were. And then also more right-leaning comments were, let me see, what did they say? This was like manufactured opposition to the video of the barista. I can't remember if it was man or a woman, but of the barista writing "loser" on the cup. There were people literally commenting that I was wearing a green shirt underneath a windbreaker I had on, or a pullover. People were genuinely saying that, nice try, Starbucks. This guy's obviously an employee, and he obviously wrote on the cup, and he obviously is trying to, convince us that Starbucks is not evil or whatever. The green shirt I was wearing, by the way, is from a marathon I ran last year, which is hilarious. And it's just really highlighted again, there's been a radical deprogramming for a lot of people since Charlie Kirk's death, and there's also been a radical entrapment even further ideologically for a lot of people. And I think one of them is the conservative idea that that Starbucks would hire and pay a mostly broke but working two jobs, because I have two jobs, teenager who has no social media presence, occasionally posts politically. I really haven't posted politically until the past couple of weeks. I find it hilarious, laughable, and idiotic that Starbucks would go that far to go and find a guy with no more than 700 followers and be like, hey, we need you to do this video, blah, 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 and it's going to hit the algorithm. I had no expectation that the algorithm was going to like this video, and it's just even more stupid and asinine to think that, I was paid to make that video. And then another more leftist idea was, you're worshiping a man who spread hate. Number one, I worship Jesus, okay? Get that right. Number two, if you're gonna say, and you're gonna narrow down the entire idea and if you wanted to encapsulate Charlie Kirk into something, and that something is spreading hate, I think you've made a severe misjudgment of things he said. And I really think you should go back and listen to the full 2-hour-long conversations and debates he was having with people, so you can get the full context and understand what was happening and why he said the thing he said. I don't think he's racist. He was doing the Black Leadership conferences. I also don't think he's, homophobic or anything. He has his religious beliefs, but he loves gay people because that's what we've been taught. Love the sinner, but not the sin. And he even called out an anti-gay extremist a couple of years back that, if he hates gays, he's not a Trump supporter, because Trump had a gay man speak at a conference, or I'm forgetting exactly what the thing was. I think this is prior to 2020. Anyway, I think if you look back at the hundreds of thousands of hours, again, that he's talked, I think you would find that you would agree with a lot more than you think. And I think you would have a more middle of the road opinion of him. And I think that's better than going to either extremes. I think it's a little extreme to say that he never said anything that I could disagree with, or never said anything bad. He was a man after God's heart, and he was a good father, and obviously a good husband, and he was in pursuance of many good things, many respectable things, and I think the majority of things were good things. That doesn't mean I didn't disagree with him every now and then. And honestly, I really wouldn't be able to cite even the exact times I disagreed with him. So I'm not going to plaster him as he spread hate, English. But this, again, highlighting these two contrasts, you have people who are severely convinced that, Starbucks would pay a college student to make that video in opposition to the loser cup. And then you have, liberals whose first inclination, instead of watching the whole video or watching the full clip I posted after that, it's you worship a man of hate. And so that kind of brings me to another thing that happened last week. Last week, Jimmy Kimmel was brought off of air from ABC. And I might mess some of this up, so bear with me, but I've got my notes here. And this is, again, kind of like a lot of times both right and left will get a headline or a 5-second clip, and they will go and they will run with it completely. One of the best examples, especially we as more conservative leaning people, I'm way more middle of the road now than I was in high school, but I think as believers in the political sphere, we need to recognize that getting even with groups of people is not Christ-like or Christ-minded. It's not, now obviously there was respectful disagreement, there was respectful justice that can happen, and I don't think when people say that Jimmy Kimmel was brought off air because of a joke he made, I disagree with that. I don't think it was because of the joke he made. I think because of the last 5 years, I've got some actual numbers here, he's has pretty steady decline in viewership. The monthly viewers back in 2015 was, looks like 2.4 million viewers a month. And then between 2016 and 2018, he was pretty consistently 2.1 million. 2019, 1.9. 2020, now COVID rolls around, 1.8. And then in 2021, 1.5, steady dip. And then around election time, 2024, early quarter, 2025, he went up again to 1.7 million and then took a really fast decline from quarter 2 of 2025 to now, all the way down to 1.1 million viewers a month, which that's a pretty steady decline. Now, I want to go back again to the quote that people believe he was taken off air of, because I don't think a lot of people have actually heard it. And I want to preface by saying I don't agree with, I think, 90% of anything Jimmy Kimmel said. He's been on air for years and years and years and years, and he said plenty of controversial things. I don't think that out of every crazy thing this guy has said, that this is the quote that brought him off air. I think it was an excuse for him to be brought off air for that drop in viewership. Here's the quote. Kimmel says, "The MAGA gang doing everything they can to score political points from the murder of Charlie Kirk," parentheses. He's kind of implying that a lot of conservatives were putting a spin on Kirk's death and like labeling him a leftist and like an extremist leftist and all this stuff, and it was for political gain. The funny thing is I agree with him, and that might be insane to say, but I did see a lot of conservatives, and I'm challenging everybody right now to kind of think hard about this. I saw a lot of conservatives using this as leverage for more political gain. Matt Walsh put out a tweet. I don't have the exact tweet here. I'll have to find it later. But it was along the lines of, I can independently report that Tyler Robinson's dating a transgender woman or something, trans boyfriend. He's got a trans boyfriend, and all of these leftists are extremists and stuff. And he basically generalized a ton of leftists, and I mean everybody, into this insane category that they're all extremists and they're all violent. Now, I'm gonna say something. I do believe there is something fundamentally wrong with what's happening on the left. That doesn't mean I have really good leftist friends who are even more middle of the road, and that doesn't mean that there are things that leftists and more democratic-leaning people and more liberal-leaning people have said that have made me question something I've said or I've thought. Okay, I do think there is something fundamentally wrong over there, but that doesn't mean there are the outliers. And I also think there are a lot of good people over there. These very minuscule minorities out of the whole group, they're not even like what Matt Walsh is talking about in that tweet. That's not even liberalism. That's a thing of its own. Many people have talked about the political spectrum and how the middle of the road looks more conservative because it's that stupid thing Elon Musk always posts all the time, and how the left line goes way out to the right, or for some reason it's like conservative and liberal, but when you're looking at it, it makes sense. Anyway, the line shifted way this way, and now the middle looks like it's on the right because the line is longer. I don't know if that made any sense, but it kind of falls in that category of like, you can't generalize everybody over there. And by what Matt Walsh is saying, by him saying that, all it does is polarize the side even more. And now they have this thing to kind of throw darts at. And Kimmel is kind of ironically, for the first time I think I've ever heard him say anything that I agree with, he's kind of highlighting something important. And then he obviously follows it up with the clip of Trump being asked how he feels about his friend's death. And he was like, I'm good or whatever. And then he's like, construction's happening over there. And there's kind of a weird joke about like the phase of loss he's in. I disagree. Again, there's kind of an irony in this situation where a lot of conservatives have taken this clip of Kimmel out of context, and Kimmel himself was taking that clip of Trump out of context, because Trump has come out repeatedly, and especially most recently this weekend at the memorial for Charlie Kirk, where Trump obviously said a few kind words. So again, both sides are doing the same thing, but a lot of conservatives have treated this as getting even, or now you know how it feels. And a lot of people have been like, when I've disagreed with them and been like, because I don't think, obviously the real reason he got brought off air, that's where we need to go, so I don't get too convoluted here. This is what I think is the real reason he was brought off air. Okay, so we had the drop in viewership over the last 10 years, really. He was, 2015 was his peak, and it's just been like every 5 years, it's been a consistent kind of slash and half in viewership. But Brendan Carr, the chair of the Federal Communications Commission, the FCC, he called Kimmel's comments truly sick, and the FCC had a strong case to basically hold ABC, the show's parent, accountable for the characterization that was made. Again, I really like even for the chair of the FCC to come out and be like he was sickened by that. It's like, are we watching the same thing? Like, I know he said some stuff before, but you got to remember he's also a comedian. There are things that conservative comedians have said horribly about the Biden administration. It gets weird. We're in a weird zone where like some comedy's accepted and some isn't. Isn't that ironic? Because for a really long time, the left did, like, you could not be a comic, think about people like Joe Rogan and Roseanne Barr or whatever, there was attempts at canceling them from the left. And now look at what the right's doing. And again, this is the purpose of this show. I want to call out the hypocrisy. I want people to start putting their thinking caps on and stop getting freaking sucked in and ideologically captured by people on the other side of the aisle and the people in your own seat. You're fighting two heads of the same snake. That's what's happening. Anyway, not going to get into that yet, but we will later. Blah, 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 blah. Carr also warned that broadcasters have obligations under their FCC licenses to serve the public interest. And that's where the conversation of, freedom of speech, it doesn't always apply when you work for somebody, which I agree. It's kind of, I have like a mixed stance on that, where yes, I think if you work for somebody and they think, oh, you said this crazy thing, we can fire you. I think that's okay too. But I don't like the characterization that, the extreme characterization that a corporation can kind of just do whatever they want. I disagree with that. Anyway, the FCC also kind of talked about how that some television stations, they are required to serve public interest, whatever the hell that means. Carr has argued that airing content that spreads misinformation or is not in the public interest could put license holders at risk. Let's talk about Fox. Let's talk about some of the things Kash Patel has said recently in the past 2 weeks on live television, that now, as of, I think it was yesterday or today, today? This is releasing on Tuesday, so it would have been yesterday, that Kash Patel was basically kind of like, hey, we're at square one with this whole investigation. Does that mean anything he said was misinformation? The stuff about Tyler Robinson, changing clothes 3 times in a row, and there's limited camera footage, and you know what I mean? It gets convoluted. So like if you're gonna go really hard on misinformation, you gotta apply it to everybody. But that's why I think this is case specific, because I don't really consider this to be misinformation, because I do believe that Kimmel was generalizing when he said MAGA was, trying to score political points. I have a lot of considered MAGA friends who were aware of the situation and didn't, immediately go into shaming people or shaming the left. I know there were some people who wanted to know more. I do too. I don't believe anybody right now. I don't believe anyone. I don't trust anyone in the CIA and the FBI. This is really fishy. If you really start to look into it, it's a big rabbit hole. We're going to get into that in another episode, though. I don't think we have enough time to do that. But furthermore on the Kimmel thing, there's a merger happening right now. I don't know if any of you guys know about that, but it's the Nexstar Tenga Sinclair merger, and it's basically Tenga's trying to acquire Nexstar, it's Nexstar is acquiring Tenga for $6.2 billion. If completed, the merger would push Nexstar's reach past current regulatory limits, so they get more reach. The FCC would have to approve the merger. That's the thing. That's the key thing, man. The FCC has to approve this. Keep that in mind. And possibly relax or change ownership cap rules to allow the merger to happen. Okay? Keep that in mind. They would have to relax or change ownership cap rules to allow it to happen. The link between these two things, the merger and Kimmel going off here, okay, is that Nexstar is looking for favorable regulatory decisions, okay? So some people, myself and others, think that Nexstar may have had an incentive, a fiduciary interest, in complying with some of the criticism over Jimmy Kimmel, and with what the FCC was saying. And in other words, by pulling the show, Nexus would have possibly avoid conflict with the FCC and with Carr, obviously the chair, and it could make it easier to get the merger approved to maintain / expand its license coverage under more favorable terms. So it was kind of like, oh, this guy's getting criticism and we're trying to do a merger. Well, if we just are like, sir, yes, sir, to the FCC, and we get rid of him, maybe the deal will go by faster. So here we are, once again, in another situation where you follow the money, and you find out that it's all about the money. Now, there's no public, this is all kind of speculation, this is all allegedly, there's no proof exactly that this is why Nexstar did that, because why would there be proof of that? But it's just kind of the last straw for Kimmel, is kind of like how we can view it. It's like, oh, he made that one super controversial joke that probably no one actually read the monologue or actually watched the clip, but he said something super controversial and it was his last straw and we're going to take him off air. Sure. It's kind of like, I'm not going to say he shouldn't have been brought off air, because if realistically the reason is actually that he was just losing them money and they wanted to bring him off air anyway, and then he said this thing, and we have a Trump admin right now, and the FCC is kind of in the throes of kind of being super regulatory. I think that's the real story. I think it was more of just we're going to get rid of this guy so we can make some more money. And again, we're going to go down the rabbit hole a little bit, but I wanted to talk about the Tyler Robinson text. I think everybody's talking about them. I think a lot of people have brought up the fact that they look like AI wrote them, or a FBI agent that was like, how do teenagers talk, or an FBI agent that read a lot of poetry and a lot of Shakespeare. And so we're going to go through, we're going to read some of the things, just imagine right now, you're watching a Disney Channel show, except it's about a guy who murdered somebody. That's how this feels. It feels like I'm watching a poorly written episode of Austin and Ally, where Austin accidentally axed somebody with his guitar, and he tried to hide the guitar in the woods, and he changed 3 times in the process for whatever reason, and then he shows up at Dairy Queen at a weird time, and it contradicts what time some of these texts were sent. If you know what I'm talking about. If you know, you know. Anyway, listen how cinematic this is. Robinson goes, drop what you are doing. Look under my keyboard. His trans boyfriend goes, like, what? What do you mean? I'm gonna look under the keyboard. And allegedly the roommate looks under the keyboard and there's a note that allegedly read, look how cinematic this is. I had the opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk and I'm going to take it. The roommate says, or is this his boyfriend or is it his roommate? I don't know. I think, no, he says my love, so it's his boyfriend, right? Or girlfriend. I'm sorry, I don't want to misgender anybody. I don't mean that sarcastically. The roommate responds with, what? Question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark. You're joking, comma, right? Question mark, question mark, question mark. Robinson replies with, I am still okay, my love. I'm still okay. I'm still okay, my love. But am stuck in Orem for a little while longer yet. A little while longer yet. Shakespeare once wrote, but I'm stuck in Orem for a little while longer yet. He wrote that. Trust me. It's in Romeo and Juliet. Trust me, bro. And then, shouldn't be long until I can come home. But I gotta grab my rifle. Still, my rifle, not my gun. My rifle. I don't know. I think I've called weaponry that looks like that rifles before, I think. I've never shot a gun before, so I don't know. Maybe I should have by now. I think I have. A BB gun. BB gun counts. Anyway, but I never called that a rifle. To be honest, Robinson continues, to be honest, I had hoped to keep this secret till I died of old age. You would have been on your deathbed and you would have looked at your boyfriend, you would have been like, or girlfriend, I don't know, them. You would have looked at them, your lover. You would have looked at your lover and you would have been like, I shot Charlie Kirk 60 years ago. And everybody would be like, that's crazy because, what? Anyway. I am sorry to involve you. So why would you implicate this person? Like, what? It just, the logic doesn't make sense to me anymore. Like, you wrote a note and left it allegedly, and the roommate finds the note, and it's like, it's so cinematic. It's just like, it's, and you know what tells me this was AI? The punctuation, the exaggeration, okay? I know some people that text like this, and they are in the minority, okay? Now, obviously, these guys could just be in the minority, you know? Anyway, so after Robinson literally says, I'm gonna take it, and, you know, I'm stuck in Orem, and I have my rifle, and, you know, I want this to stay a secret, the roommate says, you weren't the one who did it, right? What do you mean? He just said he did. What do you mean? What do you mean you weren't the one who did it? Golly. Anyway. Robinson says, I am, comma, I'm so sorry. These commas, like that's the tell-all right there. That punctuation is just, Roommate responds with, I thought they caught the person. And Robinson responds with, no, they grabbed some crazy old dude. How'd you know that? So when you were changing on the roof, I guess, and unscrewing your gun, you managed to see the guy who showed up on TV and stuff, who was harassing the police during, you know, the initial confrontation and stuff. You managed to see that in this, you know, time you were changing, which, by the way, that guy he's talking about got arrested. Or sorry, I can't say that. I'll have to bleep it out. I'm gonna bleep it out. He had his phone when he got arrested. Anyway, Robinson continues with, I had planned to grab my rifle from my drop point shortly after, but most of that side of town got locked down. It's quiet, comma, almost enough to get out, but there's one vehicle lingering. There's one vehicle, it's a vehicle. There's a vehicle lingering. What? Like, vehicle? Who calls their car their vehicle? Let's see. I'm going to do a quick message search on my MacBook. Candace Owens did this too. And let's see. Let me see. The last time I texted vehicle was the 13th of January to one of my car friends. And I said, Volvo's a ripoff for about 90% of the vehicles they make. Sorry, Volvo. And then before that, it was December 2024, but it was a link to a car dealer. And that is the only time in my text messages I've ever said that. Actually, it was an automated text to me about a car dealership. So the thing that's just weird is, like, I don't know if these guys are talking like this and he's just like, my vehicle, or not my vehicle, but there's one vehicle lingering, like you wouldn't say car, and you're essentially rushing, and you're hiding from people at this point, and you're like, I'm going to take the time to spell out vehicle so he knows what I'm talking about. Vehicle could also mean like an ATV, right? Or a I don't know, what's it, like a dump truck, or you know what I mean, like vehicle, like in that text about Volvo, I said vehicles because I was able to generalize all, because when you say car, you think like an SUV or a sedan, but when you say truck, it's a truck. And then, Volvo also don't they make boat engines or something, or motorcycles? That's why I said vehicles, because, I was trying to get a whole group of people, trying to group a bunch of things together. Anyway, roommate says, why? Robinson replies with, why did I do that? Or do it? Why did I do it? And roommate says, yeah. Robinson says, I had enough of his hatred. Some hate can't be negotiated out. Anyway, here we are, radicalizing people. Here we are. Robinson then goes on to say, if I'm able to grab my rifle unseen, not without getting caught, unseen, I will have left no evidence. Going to attempt to retrieve it again. Hopefully they have moved on. I haven't seen anything about them finding it. So he's watching the news as well, apparently. And roommate says, how long have you been planning this? And Robinson says, a bit over a week, I believe. Interesting. I can get close to it, but there is a squad car parked by it. I think they already swept that spot, but I don't want to chance it. The squad car, I think they already swept that spot, but I don't want to chance it. See, this, if I were writing a movie, this is how I'd write it, because I'm very, I talk like this. See, I talk like this, kind of. Not even really. This is even more, intellectual than how I talk. And I would consider myself an intellectual, unless, the haters have something else to say. Always hating on me. Robinson then goes on to say, I wish I circled back and grabbed it as soon as I got to my vehicle. As soon as I got to my vehicle, I wish I grabbed the gun, the rifle though. I wish I got to my vehicle, not my car, not my truck, my vehicle. Let's ask ChatGPT right now, actually. Let's ask ChatGPT to write a sentence involving someone going to their car. Write an exchange between two people, I spelled two, T-O, two people trying to go back to grab their jackets from their car at a cold baseball game after forgetting them. I talk nice to ChatGPT. You know what? Maybe I shouldn't use. Maybe that's the thing, is they don't know. Maybe when they were writing that, they didn't know what he drove yet. Or maybe they did. And maybe I need to write vehicle in there. Let's see. Let's write vehicle in there and see if it changes the grammar. No, this is weird. ChatGPT is saying car. Again, I think it's the situation where it's kind of like that one clip of what's his name, where he's got the skateboard and he's like, hello, how do you do, my fellow kids? That's kind of how it feels. It's like they're trying to be a little childish, but this was definitely a 45, 60-year-old man who's been in the FBI for like 30 years, who wrote these text messages. I don't think any of us is denying that anymore. But Robinson has this big spew of a conversation, and this is where you know something's happening, okay? But Robinson then, like, the language changes. Robinson says, I'm worried what my old man would do if I didn't bring back Grandpa's rifle. Okay, so we're gonna like make this rifle important and intimate, you know what I mean? And then he says, IDEK, so I don't even know if it had a serial number, idiot. But it wouldn't trace to me. I worry about prints. I had to leave it in a bush where I changed outfits. Didn't have the ability or time to bring it with. I might have to abandon it and hope they don't find prints. How the expletive, so how the blank, well, I explain losing it to my old man. I love how this guy just killed somebody and he's on the run from the cops. And he's thinking about how is he going to tell his dad that he lost a gun. Anyway, then he says, only thing I left was the rifle wrapped in a towel. Remember how I was engraving bullets? The blanking messages are mostly a big meme. If I see notices bulge, ooh. On Fox News, I might have a stroke. All right, I'm gonna have to leave it. So now all of a sudden, the punctuation is gone. Now they're typing in lowercase. Now it gets weird because now he's got slang. He's writing on these bullets. He's engraving the bullets with notices bulge, ooh. What? You just said I'm gonna go retrieve the rifle from my vehicle, and there's a squad car outside. I hope they haven't swept, the area. And what was the other thing he said at the beginning that was crazy? It was but I'm stuck in Orem for a little while longer yet, and now all of a sudden you're talking about notices bulge, ooh. Anyway, judging from today, I'd say Grandpa's gun does just fine. I don't know. I think that was a $2,000 scope with like a little emoji. And Robinson says, delete this exchange. So this is a little bit while after. And he says, my dad wants photos of the rifle. He says, Grandpa wants to know who has what. The Fed released a photo of the rifle, and it is very unique. Have we seen photos of the rifle? I don't know. He's calling me right now, not answering. So he's not going to answer his dad. Not suspicious. Since Trump got into office, my dad has been pretty diehard MAGA. There she is right there. We got him, boys. Ladies and gentlemen, we got him. That's how you know Fed wrote this, right there. They are, again, proceeding to radicalize a certain group and, put a bunch of, hate towards the left. Because every leftist and every liberal hates MAGA. Everybody, oh, my dad's so MAGA. I hate him. Like, wow. Anyway, Robinson says, I'm going to turn myself in willingly. One of my neighbors here is a deputy for the sheriff. He's going to let you go. Hey, Mr. Sheriff neighbor, I murdered Charlie Kirk. You think you can get me a light sentence? What? Like, how? My question is, what is that? How is that even relevant to the rest of these text messages? You know what I mean? Okay. And then he says, gosh, this is like depressing. This hurts, dude. This hurts to read. Robinson says, you are all I worry about, love. And then roommate says, I'm much more worried about you. Robinson says, don't talk to the media, please. Don't take any interviews or make any comments. If any police ask you questions, ask for a lawyer and stay silent. Oh boy. Yeah, this is crazy. There are people who believe this. There are people who genuinely think that these are real text. This actually happened. Now let's check to see if there's an actual photo of the rifle. Tyler Robinson, photo of rifle. Gosh, I love having a computer right by me. Oh yeah, it's the photo of the rifle in the box. Okay. Nothing about that looks unique. Looks like a gun you'd buy from Walmart. You probably did. Well, whoever put him up to the job, you know what I mean? Oh my gosh, I don't even know. It's just that line right there. Since Trump got into office, my dad has been pretty diehard MAGA. That line right there, and then, Matt Walsh coming out and being like, I can independently report that his boyfriend was trans, and these are extremist leftists. We must greet them with, anger, and we can't, we're here to, we're going to punish them, and we're going to get back. You're an idiot. You sound like an idiot. Kind of back to the Jimmy Kimmel thing. That whole, the logic of, and these things kind of go together, the logic of, well, they did this thing to us, and that, hurt us, and it was evil that they did this. Like Roseanne Barr, they canceled Roseanne Barr. And I agree, that was dumb. You know what else is dumb? Doing the same thing back. You kidding me? How is that logical? How do you win? You're just playing tit for tat. It's never going to end. But then when you start thinking harder about it, that's when you realize that, these talking heads, they're all kissing butt behind closed doors, and that's why they're all trying to radicalize us. That's why they're trying to make it tit for tat on purpose, so we never unite. We never realize that they all hate us, and they think you're stupid. I'm looking at the tripod, and I meant to be looking at the camera. They think you're stupid. They literally think you're stupid. They genuinely think you're stupid. They want it to be tit for tat over and over and over again, and they want you to keep thinking that the left is super evil, and they want the left thinking the right is super evil, and everybody's MAGA, and everybody's libtard, and they want you to go back and forth. When in reality, I think a lot of people in America are more middle of the road. I talked to a lot of students lately, and they're kind of more middle of the road too. Now, unfortunately, we have a problem with the education, industry, or whatever you want to call that, where there are a lot of cahoots in literally just brainwashing people. I listened to Penn State lectures for that class, Soch 119. Really great, class, by the way. Nice slurp. It's literally where you get to watch, college students, have Socratic debates. It's SOC 119. They have 430-something thousand followers on there, or subscribers on YouTube. Great lectures. I try to go into them with no judgment, but it is Penn State. And it's really interesting to hear how a lot of our young people today don't want to come down off of the thing they believe in. And this goes for both conservative minds and more liberal minds. I experience this pretty frequently with some of the conservative students I know. A lot of them are super educated in what's biblical and stuff, but it's not that they've been educated, it's that they've been told by somebody that this is what this thing means, rather than trying to figure it out for themselves. And that goes the same way for people on the left. Isn't that crazy? That they've been told things and by other people, and they've never really gone to figure it out themselves. It's kind of why, it's kind of why you have people who kind of come out of liberalism, the woodwork, and they kind of end up being more middle ground when they actually start to get to know Jesus on their own and get to develop their own relationship with Christ, or they get saved and stuff. And they do it on their own, and that sort of getting saved and confessing Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior is very you got to figure that on your own. You know what I mean? You're not just going and doing that, especially if you're coming, you have the thing right now on the right where you just kind of you have a lot of people who say they're believers, but are they? You know what I mean? And that's because it's a way more personal choice. And I'm giving this example because it's you got to get to know Jesus on your own. And it's incredible how the Bible and Christianity, but not just Christianity, but Jesus Christ Almighty himself ties so well. Again, it is a really living word, but it really ties so well into the political sphere because people who really know Jesus have gone and looked for him themselves. And they know the truth, and they're ready to share the truth bravely and boldly. And it's a great example because a lot of people who go and figure things out for themselves become the same way, not just about the Bible or Christianity or the gospel, but really anything they care about. Me, I'm the same way. The more I start to read about something myself, the more I want to go and challenge other people and be like, hey, have you thought about it this way? Because this is what I found out by reading about it myself. This is what I found out by experiencing it myself. Now, that doesn't mean that my experiences are perfect. We also can't walk around with the assumption that our perception is unflawed, okay? A lot of ideas, actually any idea any of us can ever have, unless it's, from God, is completely flawed. I'm not saying that it's the wrong idea, but the flaw is that you're assuming that your perception is perfect and that there is, this idea can't be challenged. Real growth happens, real change happens when we all start to recognize our own faults and we all start to challenge each other and we don't get defensive and we don't get, that defensiveness just polarizes everything. And instead now, you don't, obviously, you're not going to like what people have to say a lot of the time. You're not going to like it when people try to challenge you. Your flesh doesn't want that. Your flesh wants your people or the people around you and your friends to just, agree with you. You want them to be compatible. You want them to, like, your friend group is, we all just click instantly. Well, that's not growth because no one's challenging you. And this, again, you could expand this idea into the entire country, but it's like real change and real growth is being surrounded by people that do occasionally oppose you and do challenge you. And I hate that there's a lot of people that live with the assumption that your friends aren't supposed to challenge you and your friends aren't supposed to disagree with you. People think that. The fact of the matter is that they're supposed to. They're supposed to disagree with you sometimes. And they're supposed to challenge you. And that's only to uplift you. That's only to push you further. That's only to get you to think a little bit harder. And then you do the same thing for them. And what's crazy is that when you get into a good friend group and you get into a good culture where that, becomes central to how you all live your lives, is like, it can start with one person. It can start with one person. I recently had a conversation with somebody. I disagreed with a lot of what they said. And they disagreed with a lot of what I said. And that was fine. And you know what we did? We offered the option of, can I meet you in the middle? What is something, you've seen this in videos from the surrounded videos where you get conservatives surrounded by 20 liberals, whatever. You see this a lot. And it's really important, and I think we all need to incorporate this more into our lives. Where can I meet you in the middle? Where can we agree? Because that will become a good starting point for us to start to understand each other better. You know what I mean? Like, oh, we do agree on this one thing. And then it cuts out a lot of that weird debate and arguing. Not debate, it's arguing. You know what I mean? You're not being productive. It's not arguing. It's not a conversation or a debate or you growing with this person or wanting to understand this person. You're arguing your point so that you can be right. And that's not how these things work. That's not productive. Really, we just have to incorporate wanting to meet in the middle more often, you know what I mean? And you kind of almost treat that as like a peace offering. You kind of go like, hey, how about this? I think, this is one thing. If you kind of pull from what they're saying and you're like, you're hitting around a subject that I think I can agree with this faucet, however it's said. I wasn't taught English. I figured it out on my own. I can't even read, actually. But I can write. It's really weird. I actually have to have somebody come in here and translate what I write back to me in Swahili, actually. Yeah, and then I understand what I was writing. Yeah, it's crazy. But what I'm saying is, I lost my train of thought. I should not have gone and rambled like that. But you're almost like making a peace offering by pulling from what they're saying and like, can we agree here? You know what I mean? Can we agree on this one side of this thing? You know what I mean? Like, for example, some people think that, let's go crazy. Let's go controversial. That's what this is for. Some people think that any sort of gun control is completely a violation of the Second Amendment. And that's okay. You can think that. And some people think that we need to completely get rid of guns altogether. Me personally, I don't think it'll work. What I think will work, and this is meeting the middle on those two things. These people don't want guns going away. These people want guns going away completely. Where can they kind of meet in the middle? and then work from there. I would say new restrictions, tighter background checks, more ownership restrictions. Maybe you can't own a certain amount of guns. Like way better on the background checks, by the way. Those are a few examples. I think most people in America can agree that's fine. That might be okay. I mean, it's like, it's a tricky situation. You know what I mean? Like, because you don't want to take gun. I'm not going to get into the whole gun control thing. I don't have enough time for that. Not enough brain cells for that. But, like, I think we all can kind of agree, like, okay, maybe some more, like a little bit more restriction on who can get a gun. And the people who are like, no guns would be like, okay, yeah, that's a good starting point for both of you guys. You know what I mean? They get a little bit of something. And now some people might say that, you're only, only that person that says they want guns to go away is benefiting from that. I'd argue no, because I think some of these restrictions actually do help in certain areas. I think we can prove that statistically. When you look at everything kind of more not internationally, but nationally. I don't want to get into the whole subject. Big slurp. This is kind of really all I had written down. We've been going for a little over an hour now. I don't know what I'm going to call this episode. I kind of want to call it Two Heads of the Same Snake, but I think that's a little much. So I'm going to figure it out before we post it. We also don't have a name for the show. We're going to figure that out later. I would like any sort of recommendations. We're going to put this episode together tonight. It is Monday. This should be coming out Tuesday night around 5 p.m. It really is going to be the start to something really important. I really want to do this once or twice a week. I want my friends' inputs. I want to have my friends on. This kind of show, big shout out to Kalen Cole, one of my roommates. He's kind of helping me produce all this. This is his desk, his tripod, his lamp, his lights. We initially were going to do this in the basement, and it looked kind of like a terrorist interrogation room, so we chose not to do that and just do it in my bedroom with a cool, totally not bisexual looking bedroom setup. Don't worry, guys. I'm straight and I have a girlfriend. Nothing to question here. Again, I don't want to make light of anything that's happened in the last 2 weeks. This show, I've always wanted to do something like this, but it really was kicked off by the death of Charlie Kirk. Obviously, I never met him. I disagree with him a few times, but I really went back and I looked at a lot of things he said, and it really encouraged me to be a little bit more bold and maybe try something I've never done before. And I'm really excited about that. I'm really excited to see where this goes. I think these episodes are going to get longer and longer, so brace for impact. And I'm really excited to have some of my friends on. I would love to have some of my roommates and other people I know come and kind of be the audience almost and chirp at me, and we'll try and get a camera on them. Shoot me a DM if you want to do that. I think it'd be a lot of fun. I already have a couple of guests that I already kind of have lined up. But yeah, we're going to wrap this thing up. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to me basically yap and rant for a really long time. I really want to have this be kind of an expression of my faith and my love for Christ. I have a little bit more of a Pauline, maybe aggressive, maybe even contradictory approach to how I share the gospel. But I want this show, I want people to look back, and I want myself to look back, no matter how many viewers it gets. I want to be able to look back at me doing this and see a progression in my faith and a strengthening of my faith. And I want to be able to look back and really see how much my opinions changed and how much I learned about God and about America and about people around me. I want this to be an exercise, I'm trying to get stronger here. I think that's all I got. I will see y'all next week. Peace out.